Hi, everyone. We'll give folks just a minute or two to get in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone.
Oh, I don't think I sent that to everybody.
It may not
There we go.
be. There we go. Hi, everyone. We'll get started here in just a second. We're going to just give folks maybe one more minute to get in, and then we'll get started. Oh, love it. Yes. So we've got some folks coming in from South Africa and Greece and Italy.
Awesome.
Um,
That's amazing.
yeah. Awesome.
All over the place. Happy evening to many of you.
Yeah.
It's morning here.
Hello, hello. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So hi, everyone. Welcome to this joint webinar between the Center for Open Science and the folks that are working on Staple, which you'll hear about here today. I'm really excited. I'm going to keep my part of the introduction pretty short. My name's Crystal. I'm mostly just here to help things move along. Um, I am really excited to introduce Erin Buchanan. She's a professor of cognitive analytics at Harrisburg University of Science and Technology, and she is going to talk about Stable, which is some software to help scientists document and share their research. I will let her do most of the talking for that. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function, which tends to be, I know everybody's Zoom, so we were just talking about this. Everybody's Zoom setup is like a little bit different. But for me, it's at the bottom of the screen. There's it may be depending on your resolution of your monitor, be under the more button, but there's a little Q&A. It looks like a little box with a question mark in it. You can type in your questions there. I'll also monitor the chat while Erin's talking, and then near the end of the presentation, we'll leave some time open for me to ask Erin any questions that you guys had during the chat during the presentation. This is recorded. It will be sent out afterwards, so you don't have to scramble too much. If you're trying to take notes and you miss something, you'll be able to go back and watch this. We'll put it on our YouTube channel. And then Erin's also shared the slides in the chat, and we'll also share that out in the email to everybody that's registered. Without further ado, I'm going to turn my video and audio off, and I will give the floor to Erin. Thank you.
Thanks, Crystal. So I am really happy to be here today. Thank you. I saw all the cool places that people were from. Thanks to the Center for Open Science for agreeing to let me do this talk. And thanks to all of you for coming this morning, afternoon, evening. I'm going to talk about Staple today. I'm going to give you the kind of overview, the reason why we built the software and kind of where everything came from, and then a very quick demo of how it works. And then I'm happy to take questions, but this is open and free to use at the moment online. So I'll share that link in a little bit. Um, but the main website with all the documentation and all the information on who coded it and what's going on with it is at staple.science. And so Staple stands for Science Tracking Across Project Lifespans. And the idea is that you're stapling together all the pieces of your project. But why would we need software? Is really the question I get from folks. Why do I need something new? And I'm going to draw on a lot of my experiences from working with big teams, because big team science tends to amplify the problems that you see in smaller teams because there are so many people involved. But in general, science is fairly collaborative. What we see publication-wise is the larger and larger teams across time and very fast moving. Now, our version of fast is not the same as business versions of fast, but what we see is that science projects do tend to get published quite a bit lately, and the number of publications also is increasing over time. And so managing the people involved in the science, the tasks, the documentation, and the whole workflow of the system, it gets pretty complex, especially as we start to add a lot of these good practices of open science, right? So the adding more and more things that we should be doing when we run a research project. And most research teams rely on these ad hoc solutions. So working with the Psych Science Accelerator, I can tell you that we have tried everything under the sun, including classroom management software and lots of Google Docs. But it's not the best, right? There are lots of ways that things can go wrong. And then the other piece to this is the documentation, the metadata. I don't love talking about metadata because it normally scares people off, but metadata is just the data about the project. It doesn't actually have to be data about the data, although that's important. But it's all the extra things. Who did what when, and what things happened in the project, and what decisions were made. And that knowledge is rarely centralized in one place. It might be the one PI that knows everything, or the one set of admin teams. And then people often leave projects for various reasons. They graduate, PI moves, they don't have time anymore. And so you can kind of lose information, and that information about the protocol can get lost or just is never written down, right? So when people leave, the project level memory often leaves with them, or even the sort of institutional memory. So you hear this a lot about people working at places, but it's also true for projects, right? And so tracking that documentation with very large teams is very cumbersome. And working with these big teams of 300 scientists or more, it ends up being a lot of like, wait, where was that document? Where is this thing? How do I keep track of who's done what? Okay. And then as we are moving from the beginnings of the open science movement, so to speak, the reform, if you will, we keep getting told, well, yes, you should share stuff, but sharing it isn't just sticking it on OSF, right? We need to also share what is in it. And that's the metadata part. So metadata allows us to have this transparency of like what's in the data, what are the stimuli, where are the protocols, what about the analysis plan, okay? And that allows us to reuse and understand information better. And when you work in these big teams, there's hundreds of translations. So I've seen a lot of folks talking about all the different places they're from, and that's a lot of cool data that you can use, right? Or I don't have to translate this because this team already did it. But if you can't find it, then you end up doing the work over again. And so metadata allows us to find stuff as well. But that lack of structure and standardization on metadata can really slow us down. Okay? And so the big catchphrase is FAIR. So findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. These standards have mostly focused on data, making people make data clearer. But that's not the only thing that comes with projects, right? And so how do we make it easier for folks to share their information in a fair way? And so that long-term data storage was really the first step. So places like Figshare, the Open Science Framework, Harvard's Dataverse, Databrary, Zenodo, there's a bunch now. That really tackled the problem of accessible, putting things in a place where they're not really going to move around too much, right? If we put them on a university website, they often get lost after the person retires or leaves or whatever. Guilty of this as well, some of my old publications. But now these permanent solutions can really help us cover the accessible. People can access them. But it doesn't necessarily make them totally fair. Then we also have the transparency and openness standards for journal publications, generally, that remind us that we should also be sharing our code, our materials, the stimuli, the analysis plans, pre-registrations, etc. And so it's like all these different moving parts together, right? So it's not just about the data, it's also about the whole project. And now I can make all of that accessible, but how do I make it more fair? Right? And then we also, the other piece of this puzzle is credit. So if you're not familiar with credit, it's a contributorship system. So traditional publishing has focused on authorship, the intellectual merit that you added to the project. But we're slowly moving to contributorship, the way that people have contributed to a project. If you meet a certain minimum, you get included as an author. So credit is one of the most popular systems that journals use. This is things like writing, analysis, data collection, translation, those kinds of things. But to be able to fill out that form on the journal website, you have to know who did what. If you have 2 people, pretty easy. If you have 400 people, not so easy. So all these pressures at once, right? We should do good open science. The transparency and openness procedures like tell us, hey, you should share this information. Credit means I got to know who did what. That's a lot of pressure on people. So how do I keep all that information together, right? So let's fill that hole, that gap. So our existing toolkits that we have fall short, right? So there are plenty of project management softwares out there. Asana, Monday, Trello, ClickUp are kind of the big one, popular ones that I see in the US. But they're not really designed for research. They're designed for businesses to get things done. And that's not quite how we work, right? So there's no end-to-end view of a project's life cycle in the same way that they think about like sprints. And you hear this all the time for business books. We're going to do a sprint. Research doesn't always sprint. Sometimes it stumbles and falls over. So we got to have a system that can help us manage those kinds of hiccups. Right? And so no one system handles both that like documentation and the planning. Okay, by execution here, I don't necessarily mean like it runs the project for you, but it can help you manage the tasks associated with running the project. And then if you're anything like I am, you come back to projects, you're like, oh, I'm over this. I'll come back to it in a little while. Like 2 years later, you're like, what were we doing? So now if I had a system that allowed me to see my own notes and to see, okay, this person did this thing and this person did that thing, I can reconstruct what happened and finish the project out. So all of that is the reason why we designed. We saw this hole in the availability of what researchers had as a toolkit, right? There's certainly plenty of other pieces to the puzzle, things like GitHub for code, or if you like CodeOcean or Docker, or things like JASP and SPSS and R. So there's a lot of other moving parts, but what we're trying to think about is like, how do I keep all those moving parts together? So our mission is that it's project management software that allows you to document your research project, which will help you improve transparency. Right? And then the acronym logo for it. And it is an open source platform for project management. We have a version that we host for researchers to use right now as our kind of like test platform. But if this is something your university is like, oh yeah, that's cool, but we want to keep all of our data to ourselves, because that happens, it is actually open source. The university could run it itself. Okay? And it's designed for teams, transparency, and fair workflows. We're supported by the Psych Science Accelerator, that's the logo here on the left, and funding from NASA in their Year of Open Science. So got some help putting this together because money makes things go faster, right? Now, the vision for Stable when we were designing it was to support that entire, poor software update in the middle of talk here, support that entire research life cycle. Right? So getting people started through to the end in the publication. Right? Help folks provide a transparent record of their contributions and that metadata tied to those contributions in a machine readable and human readable way. Enable collaboration at any scale. So you could do a project by yourself if you like the tracking system, but it's really meant for like collaboration projects. So right now I'm working on one with one of my graduate students who I was telling Crystal before we started, is always like, wouldn't it be great if we had this button over here? So I enjoy that kind of feedback. We want this to be accessible for everyone. And this is the kind of big picture plan. Let's scroll down a little bit here. So you have people involved in projects. You might have some milestones. These might be grant oriented, they might be just your own, get the ethics documentation done, run the analysis. So this allows you to kind of like plan timing. The tasks involved with that, the roles that you assign those tasks. So this is thought of like credit categories. So this is project admin, or this is analysis plans. The metadata about the project and the people and the milestones, right? But also your metadata about your materials, your data, the report itself. Okay? The metadata is collected within Staple. And then once you have the whole thing completed and you want to share it, you can put it in your favorite long-term storage system. So we don't host the materials for you. We're kind of a layer that sits on top of that. And so you can kind of think, if you're here, you're most likely using the open science framework. You can think of like, I put all of my materials into this component, but now I'm going to also add this extra file that explains what's in those materials. So it's kind of like a documentation of the entire project, or of each of these individual pieces one at a time. And I'll show you what that report looks like here in a few minutes. So actually right now. And so I'm going to walk through kind of like a brand new user, kind of what does the software look like and how can I do some basic kinds of things. And what I'm going to highlight from a main dashboard is sort of an overview of everything that you have. And the key highlights for that main area are forms and roles. Like, what the heck are those? What do they do? Okay. And then we'll also talk about the pieces that I'm really excited about, that will improve the non-Americanization of science. Right? So most of science is conducted in English. Here I am giving this talk in English, but we are currently programming it to where you can switch the language to your whatever you prefer. Okay. It's not totally done, but that is a key feature that we are currently, I have an intern working on putting it into Spanish for me so that we can scale it up to a bunch of other languages. So let's flip over to the software. Now I'm doing this on our test instance, so ignore the link here. The real one is app.staple.science. Pop that into the chat. I'm going to show you a demo, mostly because, okay, if I remember the password, I just made this up and now I'm like, I don't remember what it was. Of course, there it is. Nope, maybe. All good talks have a hiccup. There's our hiccup. All right, so when you first log into the software, you get like kind of an overwhelming amount of pieces going on. Once you actually have some data within all these buckets, it'll start to like be a little less crazy. But here's the fun part. All of these are movable. So if you don't like the layout, you can move them around to try to highlight the things that you're most interested in seeing right at the top. So I think I have mine set up something like this, where it kind of hides the ones I'm not that interested in. But this is a brand new user. Okay? And so what I want to highlight is talk about starting at the top. So as you make your account, you've got a couple of options to update your profile. Okay? And you do have to enter your name. So these later, if you're like, oh no, I'm moving institutions and I need to change my email, perfectly fine, change your email. But no one will see your name until you add it. So that'll control showing your name within projects. But the other fun part is there are a lot of themes. You can go nuts. Cyberpunk is one of the ugliest ones, but if you're really into video games, you might like the cyberpunk theme. My favorite is either retro or dark. And you can change that bad boy to pick your favorite color scheme, and most of them are disability high contrast friendly. Okay, cyberpunk, not so much. This is also where you're going to be able to change the language. So we are targeting to do all of the different locales that are available as part of your traditional browser system. And you'll be able to, if you want, change to Romanian. Okay. Not quite yet, but soon. All right. So that's the kind of like roadmap currently of where we're going. What is all the rest of this stuff? So I figured the best way to demonstrate how this works is to kind of give you an example of something you might want to do. So let's say you want to build a project, and one of the things that you want to get in that project, right, is to make sure you have all of your collaborators' information to enter into a journal system. Because that is usually something you handle at the end, but wouldn't it be great if you had it all at the beginning? So we're going to do this registered report. We're going to grab all of our collaborators' information. How do you collect that? Normally we do it through email, Google Forms, Qualtrics, pick your favorite one. This is where the forms feature is really important. Now, we struggled for a long time to come up with a good name for this feature. It's similar to surveys, but we didn't want to imply that you're collecting participant data. So we're calling it forms, again, because people hate the word metadata. It's scary. So forms seem like a good middle of the road option. And so we come over here, you can make the information that you want to collect. So let's say that you're doing neuroscience and there's a very specific format that you're supposed to use through bits. You can import that type of form into your system. We're hoping to work on the connections with things like CEDAR, which Center for Open Science has promoted as one of the connectors within the Open Science Framework system. But if you have a specific standard you're supposed to use, most folks, if I ask them like, hey, is there a specific metadata standard you're supposed to use? They look at me like I've grown 3 heads. So what we did was we said, okay, let's give folks some templates because this may be new. So on our form templates, we have a template that you can use for contributors, just to give you an idea of where to start. Funders, project information, this is like abstract, keywords, what else? I've already forgotten. DOIs, those kinds of things. So let's add that one. A data form. So this is like the data about the data. A project document, stimuli, right? Translations, materials, that kind of stuff. IRBs. And we'll also add contributor here. And then one more, organizations, like institutions. So if you're not sure where to start, we've given you some ideas. So let's quickly look. What is that going to look like? Well, when somebody goes to fill this in, this is what they'll see. Oh, it's going to ask them for their first name, their family or their last name, their email for publications, and maybe their ORCID. But you're like, oh no, I need their department, because this is like the one place that absolutely requires a department or city or whatever it might be. You can edit them. So this is our version of a form builder. It's not Qualtrics, sorry, that's proprietary, but it is some software that will handle allowing you to add questions. So let's add a quick question. I'm going to add it here and say, okay, I want them to tell me their department. So I'm just going to call this department. All of these have tooltips. We went totally bonkers and added so many hopefully helpful pieces. So anytime you see this little I button here, you're able to get some brief information about what you should be doing there. I also happy to hear feedback about, I don't understand what this thing is for. Uh, so we can say department name, description. We'll leave, sorry, this is item type as a short answer, but you can pick lots of different things. So you could ask people to enter a date, a drop down, a number, whatever you need. And we'll make this required. Anytime you want to see what it looks like, you can click over to preview. This is what the user will see. Right? And so now we have a new question. We've got to have their department name. Cool. All right, now I'm going to save that. And we're going to use it. If later you're like, oh no, I want to go back to the default, you can actually add the defaults multiple times. So if you're like, this is my version of contributor form, but I want to go back and make a different one for a different project, it will allow you to you can add them 100 times if you want. That might be confusing, but you can do it. So you'll kind of see, I see a couple of folks over in the chat, some ideas about what's the purpose of this. You'll see a little bit more once we actually use them, but I want to highlight in the main page that you have to create them before you can use them. So the reason that they're created out here in this like main area that's all of your projects, all of your data at once, is because once I have it here, I can use it in any project. So you don't have to recreate the same questionnaire for every project. It's available to you to now use wherever you want. So for roles, same idea. Got to create it out here so we can use it within a project. And again, some folks maybe not super familiar with roles. It tells you a little bit about what roles are. So we've got some default options. Credit is my favorite one. It's a lot of what you see in journal submission systems, at least the ones I'm using. Obviously, could be other ones. But here's some other popular ones. This contributor role ontology is like credit on steroids. It has 50 categories or so, much more fine-grained. There's a randomized control version of credit, data site for data sets, and then a data credit for data sets. You can also make up your own. Okay, they don't have to be these standards, but we wanted to give people an idea of where to start. So I'm going to import those. And what it does is it pulls in the description from credit and what system it is, but you can edit them to make them your own. All right. Now, if you ever need help, there are lots of ways to get help. So we have our documentation, account issues. So we have a ticketing system. If you're having a problem, can't get logged in, something looks broken, you're getting an error, that kind of thing. We also have a Slack. All right. So that is the main dashboard. Now that I've done that, you can see that it's updated. It says I have 2 forms that I'm using potentially, and 14 potential roles because credit has 14. But none of the rest of this has done a whole lot because I haven't given myself a project or anything to do. So let's try that. And that's what the next slide goes over. Now let's delve in more to like the actual work. So this main area is an overview page, so I can log into my real account where you can kind of see like I have some tasks that are done, some that are not done, right? So this is the actual where I'm running projects, and it has a lot more filled into these spots. And so this is what it'll start to look like once you start using the software. I'm not doing very good, right? I've only completed 30% of my assigned tasks. But I wanted to show you like brand new, you're not going to see a whole lot of stuff here. It's going to be just a lot of boxes with nothing in it. Let's get into projects. Projects is where the action happens. And so we're going to talk about how the workflow we thought about working from big to small, and then how you download that metadata, and the project summary page specifically. That's the right one. So I'm going to create a project. I can add any kind of description I want here. This does support markdown formatting, so you can, add a list and add links, that kind of thing. So you can make it look pretty. So when people look at it, it looks nice and not just a huge blob of text. We added this last week. So this, thank you, graduate students. Wouldn't it be nice if this actually looked nice? I say, yeah, you're right. Now, projects have metadata. So I can add that required form. This is where forms come in. I don't remember if I made one of these. So let me click assign form. I did. So it says, here's the default one that you can use. So I go, okay, cool. I'll use that default. But if I wasn't sure what to do, I can also create the default right here. So I'm gonna save that and then hit create. So that's all you have to do to get a project started. Now, once you get one started, you are the project manager. Okay, so there's 2 roles in projects at the moment. Project managers can do everything. They add tasks, they can delete stuff, they can do anything in a project. Contributors basically can complete tasks that you assign them and view a couple of pages, but not a whole lot else. Okay? And that's meant to kind of make sure that people don't get in and accidentally delete stuff that they shouldn't be deleting. So it allows them just enough workflow to contribute to your project, but not necessarily mess anything up. Now, you have your own project level dashboard, so all of these are also movable, and you can put them in different places than the home page. And so they're controlled separately. So I could say, you know what, tasks are the most important thing to me. I need to make sure I get my stuff done and my forms filled out and my roles added. Okay. And so these pieces here kind of really let me see what I've done. Okay, they're all 0% right now because I haven't done anything. Now the contributors can also move theirs around, so you're not changing anybody else's view. But a good project has people. So I'm going to add another demo account to kind of show you like how you would add your collaborators. Okay. I can see that I am in here and I can look at what I've done so far, which is nothing. But I can also invite people. When you send this invitation, they'll get an email. It probably will go to spam the first time. Unfortunately, we're doing our best. We can't quite figure out what triggers it for some people's counts. But I'm going to invite somebody. You invite them by email. You pick what they can do. Can they see everything or only a couple things? You can change this later. You can add their role. So this is why we started with roles. If I didn't add them first, you wouldn't see them here. So you start adding them, and then now I can use them in every project I have. And let's see, this person is going to, let's say, investigation. Alphabetical is hard for me. Here we go. They're going to help collect data. Tags are a way to organize your own special dashboards. So let's call this person data collection. And oops, didn't mean to delete it there. And then we had some amazing folks from Africa, so we'll also tag it with the location. Yeah. Now, you'll notice that nobody popped up here. And so that's because we require that the person accepts their invitation before you can do anything with them. And this just makes sure that it's clear that they're like, yeah, I know I'm involved. If they don't get the email, you can give them this code. That's how they accept. It's designed in a very similar way to Qualtrics's invite by code, because I have several emails and people always invite the wrong one. So this allows me to put it in my account, not necessarily the email that they sent it to. And then I have demo person number 2 over here. And when they log in, now they can see the invitation. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And now here's what a contributor sees. So you notice they're missing a couple of the windows because they just don't have the power to do anything with forms or roles. So they get a lot of dashboard information, but only for them. So they'll only see overdue tasks for that contributor or only their notifications. So we've got one notification. So I could come over here to notifications and say, hey, I've been added to this project. Oh, and it's showing you HTML. It's not supposed to do that. I'll fix it later. So I knew we would find some bug today. Hopefully that's the simplest one. If you want the notification to go away, right, you can mark it as red. Because if some folks make the little pop-up icon go away, this is a quick way to get rid of it. So now, if all goes well, I can see both people in my project. If I decide later, like, hey, this person really needs to be able to do everything, I can change it. I won't at the moment. So that's basically like, how do I add people? Now we were talking about tags, and this is one thing I really want to highlight, is the way that we think about big to small. Okay? So tags, kind of like labels, are ways to organize milestones, tasks, and people. So tags allow you to create a little specialized dashboard where you can look at all 3 of these. Milestones allow you to organize tasks into little clusters, and tasks are given to people. So this is the big to small idea. If you want to look at a bunch of tasks at once, you can use milestones. If you want to look at big pieces of projects at once, you can use tags. Now this won't be very exciting because there's not a whole lot going on here, but I'll see that I have one contributor in my data collection for Africa, so to speak, and they haven't done anything yet because there's no task assigned to them. But we thought about this in the kind of like a big to smaller range. Okay. Now, I want to show you how to add a task because milestones are not very interesting until you do that component. but it already gave me one task. All right, well, that's because I assigned myself a metadata form. So I said, hey, this project needs some information, more information about the project. And so it automatically made me this task. Now, this is a traditional Kanban board. You can move them around. The only one you can't change is done. And that's because if you move it from here to there, it will mark it as done. Okay? And so that's the only one. You can add as many as you'd like. You can change their names. That's the only one you can't change. But if I pull into it, if it's got a due date, you can add it to calendar. I can edit it to give more information, or I can get rid of it. This part here tells me what I'm supposed to be doing and more about the task, but this allows me to show you guys how the form part works. So we made our form. Now what do I do with it? Okay. Well, actually this one says edit status, so I'm going to complete it. But it should have been a metadata form, I think. But let's make one just in case. All right. So let's make one that has the metadata, so you can see how that works. I saw someone in the thing saying, no, we love metadata, you and I together. But many people are confused by the word. Now, for every task, you do have to assign someone to do it. This is also, thank you, graduate student, who goes, wouldn't it be great if we had select all? And I said, you're right. So we're, again, happy to take that kind of feedback. So I'm just going to add myself. And then I can add some instructions. Due date. Let's make it tomorrow. And the project information form. And then I can add a tag to this one. You don't have to, though. The minimum you have to do is here. So we've kind of broken these into components where it's like, this is extra stuff, but the minimum you have to do is the top part. Great. Now let me show you how to complete a task. So if you have a task with a form attached to it, it will say edit response. And this is where you can go in, okay, what's the project name? Oh, okay, it's a demo project, right? We'll have some sort of abstract here, maybe keywords. Just gonna put in a couple of these here. And so this was our kind of minimum required ideas for projects. If you're like, no, I want to add geolocation, I want to add start and end dates, I want to add these other things, you can go in and edit it and reassign it. Hit submit. And then close. So you'll notice the task progress went to 100% because 100% of the people have done it. Now approval is a little different. So for each task, you also have the power to approve them. So it might be that you're working with somebody and you're like, hey, you didn't really fill that out correctly. Can you fix it for me? So you can mark theirs as not approved because they didn't add all of the information you needed. Okay. They'll get a notification. You'll notice my little notifications popped up over here that it was not approved. And then you could also leave them a note. Hey. Okay. And they'll also get a notification that we get this comment. Okay. I didn't get the notification because I commented to myself at the moment, but if it was some other user, they would get a notification that there was a new comment. And so that allows us kind of GitHub-like, but also just a way to give people feedback like, hey, this form isn't quite right, whatever. So how do you know you have these notifications? Well, once an evening for most of you, but in the morning for me, it actually sends you kind of a daily roundup. And it says, here's everything that happened today on your project. So that's what tasks look like. And I want to leave a good amount of time at the end because I can see questions coming through. I want to show you two more things specifically, and that is teams. So sometimes you want to assign a specific task to a group of people. And the best example I have is ethics documentation, right? So if you're working with human subjects, you have to get approval, so we don't torture them, that kind of thing. And I don't need the documentation from every single person. So I don't want to assign the task to every person. I want to assign it to this team of people, but they should all get credit for it. Or you might have an analysis team and they're presenting one final analysis before people worked on it. So you want to give everyone credit for that. So you can call this team name. Let's see, where else did I see folks were from? Italy, I think I saw. I'm going to add both of these members. Again, we can use tags to help us organize people. And now this team can be assigned tasks. Right? It shows me who they are and what they are doing. So there's a lot of different dashboards for what level you want to see. Do you want to see every task? That's the task dashboard. Do you want to see a cluster of 4 tasks? That's where milestones comes in. Do you want to see every task and person assigned to data collection? That's where tags come in. So you can kind of use this in different ways to get the level of specificness that you want to view. So when you have a task, you know what? I don't need to fill this out. I need those other people to fill it out. I can also say, hey, Italy team, fill this out for me. And so now they have the option to fill it in. And just in case people mess up, because I'm the project manager, I could actually fill it in for them. So sometimes we have folks who are just not super great at reading instructions. This is like the politest way to put it. And so you can go in and fix if they like type something wrong or it's all in caps and you want it to be in proper case. So as the project manager, you have the power to sort of like fix typos and stuff, right? Without making them completely redo it. So that was one of the main things. Was Teams is really a big highlight of how we're different than business software. That really is like I assign someone to do this, and as soon as one person does it, it's over. Versus in our case, where we might need to assign a team to do it, or you might need everyone to do it. And so in something like Asana, I would have to say task 1, person 1, and then make a new task for person 2 and a new task for person 3. Here in Staple, if you want to think about it as a classroom, so I make one task and then everyone gets a little assignment, like a class assignment. That's how we structured it. So this is one task with 2 assignments, and each person needs to do it. Or in our case, demo person 1 and the team needs to do it. All right, so how do I download that data? Right, go to download. So this allows you to download the data that you got from them. So if you had your contributor form was one of the ones we made, where you're getting like authorship information, you can download that in Excel, right, which is more user-friendly, JSON, which is more machine-readable friendly, or as a zip file of one person's file per file, one person's data per file. All right, and then the last piece I really want to highlight is this summary. Okay, so it's kind of, there's a lot going on here in different places, and I'm happy to answer questions about any one of the buttons I didn't click on over here. But since we only have an hour, I can show you the main highlights. In the project summary, right, I can now see that metadata. Well, I should be able to see the metadata. I filled it in. So here's our second bug that I'm going to fix later today. But once you have the metadata, it'll let you like download it. So for some reason it didn't stick. That kind of thing. So I think I might have just done it wrong because I forgot how I programmed this, but either way, since I'm doing it wrong, I clearly need to make it a bit clearer on my end. But anyhow, so here's the project metadata, right? And then the project summary viewer. Okay, this is the cool part. So you can generate a human and machine readable summary. So I'm gonna click on that button. Hopefully that one doesn't go bork. Oh, thank goodness. Right? I'm always afraid something's going to go really wrong in one of these talks, but a couple little hiccups, no big deal. This is what I imagine people sharing on OSF, okay, is this viewer folder. So you would upload all these files just in one component or one folder on OSF. And what it does is it creates kind of an like an output that you might send to a funder, to your department head, to your collaborators, whatever, that has all the information about the project that we just entered. I can figure out who did what when. So I've got 2 contributors here, right? And I can see that contributor number 1 didn't complete their task. So they need to go back in and do that task. But you can see that some tasks were completed, I do think. Whoops, I got excited there. Completed. Okay, this is only showing me that contributor number 1 didn't do anything, but I think the teams did. You can see what the teams tasks look like. The roles assigned to them, so we only had 1 for investigation, and download all this data in a readable format. Okay, all of that data is hidden in the background in the machine format that Google might pick up if you're searching. Okay, so that's all like not where you can see it, so that you don't have to deal with the JSON formatting. It's JSON LD, but for human readable, we can download it as a CSV. And you can look at all of the tasks instead. Okay. On a real project, this has a real number of days. You can look at each task and see who completed it, who didn't complete it, that kind of thing. Download the form data. So we had a metadata task. I can see the forms that people provided, so all the authorship information. And events. So if you had made milestones, we don't milestones, but like a timeline chart of like when people did stuff, okay, and what information that is using. Right. So it shows me there was a task completed on this day, project member added, that kind of stuff. Okay. Unfortunately, it's all in one day, but the charts look really cool when you have a longer project going on. But not only is there, let's use one of mine here, a real project. This one has more stuff in it. Not only is there this viewer that you can create, what we also built was the ability for folks to take one of your JSON files and use the external viewer. So if you had a JSON file for someone because they didn't download the viewer and you're like, that's annoying, you can actually take their JSON and recreate it in this format. So here's one from a project I'm running, some crepe stuff. So I've got 2 total members in the project so far, which are me and me, because we're testing it, right? And what tasks we've done. So you can take someone's data and view it externally as well. So we've got this sort of internal viewer that you can look at what's going to show to folks and then share it, but where other folks can like improve and mix and match on their own. All right, so let me hit back over here. So I want to give at least 10 minutes here for questions that people might have. So let me do my little couple slides. So some final thoughts, and this is a link to our Slack. But it is in active development, obviously. While we have released version 1, we saw a couple little hiccups today. So if you ever see something like that and you want to report it, I'd be happy to fix it. It usually takes me a couple days to get it fixed and uploaded. So suggestions welcome. We have several funding opportunities out to help us write the connections to places like OSF and GitHub and Zenodo and Figshare, where it can be a click of the button. As opposed to right now, you have to download it and then upload it. We're working on that button that just goes send to OSF, right? But we all have regular full-time jobs, so it does take a while without some money to hire someone to help. Okay. Our long-term plans include like a community metadata inspired by Zotero's community citation libraries and Cedar, and some sort of study swap abilities. So we'd also love for it to be a place where people could advertise, hey, I'm running this study. I'd really love some help with X. And you can look for folks who know how to do, complicated analyses or are located in a different country and can help you collect data in a different language, that kind of thing. And we'd love for you to try it. It'd be great to get feedback from places all over the world. So if you like Slack, this is the link to our Slack. If you don't like Slack, I also happily will take an email. Okay, but I want to leave the last 10 minutes for questions. So Crystal, I saw things flying over here, but I tried not to look too much.
No. I'll start with a couple of questions I think will be, fairly quick.
Okay.
You mentioned you don't so where's the data you people upload on Staples stored is a
Right.
question.
Great question. The data that you have, though, that's like where I entered, this kind of stuff, or I entered the project metadata, that is hosted currently in Germany to make sure that we adhere to GDPR for different places. So the one that we're hosting is there. It also puts it in kind of the middle of the research globe. So it's not as slow as if we were in the US and people in China were trying to access it. But if your university wants to, or your company wants to host one, you can kind of put it wherever.
All
Did
right.
that answer it? I think I did.
Yeah, I love this question. Is this platform useful also for solitary projects?
Yeah, this is third time I've gotten this question. I could see if you really liked the like tasks view, you could use it on your own. I struggle to know if I would use it on my own because I have a bad tendency of just like sitting down and doing projects. But you certainly can use it by yourself. The nice thing would be the project summary would still show that you did when you did everything and what order you did it in.
Awesome. Let's see. Some other potentially quick ones before we get into some of these nice meteor ones. Um, is there a way to let other people be notified, say by email, or do they have to log in to see everything?
Yes, so you get a daily roundup, so to speak. So I'm gonna get a bunch of emails later today where it will, if I look at notifications, send me everything that was like all of these notifications with the same links. So this time it worked fine for some reason. This is what it should look like. You'll get that email once a day. Instead of getting 10 in one day, you just get a 1 day roundup of the messages.
All right. Some of these other questions that we've gotten. So here's a question. To what extent is the metadata masked to force use of persistent identifiers like orchids, roridids, and so on? This person mentions that especially for funding or funders, the ROR would be great for future ingestion into open Alex and mapping to other open science infrastructures.
Yes, that is what I needed to talk to Orca about because they have mentioned making sure we had these components. So, okay. So the question, if I'm gonna rephrase it, is how is this tied to other systems
Yeah,
effectively?
how are can you, encourage people or to use persistent
And
identifiers?
fires, 100%. Yes. So if you have suggestions for our minimum templates, those are easy for us to update. And so we got feedback um, from Orca. I talked to them for a little bit, and that is one of the things they were like, no, you need to make sure you have this part for Funder, which was the roar thing. Um, so most of the templates include some sort of identifier, like where's the DOI, where is it located for that exact reason. But if you have ones that we should include, so like contributor has ORCID, project information has DOI, then to the goal being that they will automatically start to connect once you share this publicly. Obviously, if it stays internal, then no one's going to find it but you. But once you start sharing these metadata project summaries, then they'll start to connect the dots.
Awesome. We had a couple of questions about both the cost to the user to use this and also how easy it is for organizations or projects to self-host Staple.
Yes, the cost to the user at the moment is free. At some point, just due to servers, we'll figure out some other solution. We're applying for funding for long-term, like persistence, so that we can keep it free for researchers as long as we can. Fingers crossed. For universities to self-host, that documentation is almost done, and it's not terribly hard. if you're familiar with things like Linux and kind of those like back end setups, but we have a step-by-step guide. It's not on the documentation page at the moment because it was partially wrong, so I took it down and it should be up again at the end of the week. So as long as your university has a good IT nerd, then it shouldn't be that hard to host.
Let's see, perfect. That was also this question. Um, Several people wanted to know about the relationship between Stable and the OSF. I know you've been in talks with Eric. I don't know if there's any of that that you'd like to share.
Yeah. So once OSF is done moving things around, I hope to go back to that conversation. So I'm hoping we can, very minimally, we want to have the button that just says like send to your OSF so that you can sync it and you don't have to think about downloading and sharing it. Um, but I would love for in the new layout us to be one of the like options, kind of add on. These are called microservices options that would just like staple and it would connect the dots. I know for example, Eric told me he really loves this button, this create announcement button. So it's kind of like sending a message to all of your contributors at once, which you can't currently do through OSF. So we're trying to make those connections a bit more like handheld where they talk to each other.
Perfect. Another question that we got that's pretty interesting, I think, is can you expand on what you envision for connections to other elements of the research project ecosystem? So, for instance, tasks related to file management, like integrations with cloud storage services, documenting and following standard operating procedures, integrations with DMP tools, stuff like that.
Yes. Woof. Same idea of APIs. So having programs that can talk to each other. One of the goals with like the notes feature is that kind of idea of like I can get it to connect to various places. What I really want to encourage, which ties back to someone else's question, is with our metadata forms, we're connecting it to where it's stored in the real world. So, if it's got a fixed share DOI, we're putting that DOI in our software, and then once we share it, it'll like all kind of start working together. We just need time and energy to write the buttons that would allow it to connect to all the different things that you mentioned, like Dropbox or OneDrive or any of these other Google Docs, that kind of stuff. So right now it's fairly encapsulated, but the long-term goal is to write some of those services.
Awesome. Thanks. We have like a bazillion questions. So what I'm also going to do, I'm going to give you one more question that I think is a nice closeout question.
Okay,
But I'm also I'll send you the other questions that people have.
wonderful.
That'll be helpful. And then if there's anything that you would like us to send out, along with that closing email, we can definitely send that out too.
Sure.
But the question that I'd like to ask you last is there any way to contribute to the development of Sable?
100%. We would love people to come over. If you're more of the coding nerd, like I think I saw Nami was in here and he's actually helped a little bit as well. Let me go back. If you click on help, um, there's an option that says like, are you happy? Do you want to help us code? We have GitHub. It's all open. It's all open source. That was one of the requirements from NASA. So it's CC by 4.0 with an MIT license for coding. And you can create an issue. You can help us write stuff. Happy to have other folks involved.
Awesome. Thank you. There's lots of positive shout outs in the
Thank
chat.
you.
I think since I first saw you present on it at SIPS a few years ago, I've been really invested in seeing how this develops. I think it's going to be a really cool tool for helping people clearly document and share, what it is that they're doing in their research projects and help to manage those projects in their teams. So, for folks that are still here, thank you for coming. Thanks for asking these questions. I hope that you check it out. I hope that you send feedback. And we will definitely make sure to share that the slides and the recording and any other information that the team wants to share out in an email. Shortly after. Usually, it takes maybe a day or two for that email for us to compile everything and then get that sent out. And as somebody who's worked with Erin for a really long time, she's very easy to talk to. So please do
Thank
reach
you.
out to the team if folks have questions or suggestions. There were some interesting ideas that people had in the chat as well. So
Wonderful. And I will be happy to review those afterwards and can create a little summary to stick in the email.
awesome. Thanks everyone for coming. We look
You
forward
guys for your attention.
we look forward to seeing you again.